All right, hey everybody, welcome in. It's Dubs OT with JD, John Dickinson, and Greg Silver here. It's YouTube only tonight, and so it is going to be a lot of folks who are jumping in and joining us here on YouTube and Twitch. But the YouTube chat, we really go ham. We really go ham here when the Warriors, when we're in this situation where we're on YouTube only. So yeah, everybody that's already jumping in. And Greg popping a bunch of the comments on the screen here to begin this thing. Welcome you in. Warriors win it. And the final is 127-116. And wow, the Warriors dominate the Oklahoma City Thunder in quarter number 2 and quarter number 3. And Greg, this team is 8-2, 10 games into the season with 7 of the first 10 on the road. They have wins at Boston and Oklahoma City. It's a 4-1 trip to Houston, Washington, Boston, Cleveland, and OKC after a 4-1 start to the season. So the Warriors are rolling. They built a 30-point lead in the second half and then saw the Oklahoma City Thunder able to whittle that down to single digits. Single digits. They got it all the way down to 7, but that was as close as they would get, and the Warriors able to do enough Steph Curry down the stretch in this one, and the Warriors hold off a Houston Rocket-like comeback in the fourth quarter. 37-20 Thunder in the fourth, but the story of this one was the middle two quarters for the Warriors as they outscored OKC 83-46 in the middle two quarters. It was a bummer to see Chet Holmgren go down with what is a hip injury. Andrew Wiggins attacking the rim and Chet Holmgren in the first quarter challenging a Wiggins shot and landing on his hip. And that was my first thought. Greg, just to speak to that briefly before we really get rolling here on the conversation surrounding the Warriors. But the one thing I thought when I saw Chet hit the deck there in Oklahoma City was, I hope it doesn't wind up being a hip injury. I hope it is anything but a hip. I hope it's a bruise of some sort, but not the hip. And it ended up being the hip. So if we get news on Chet Holmgren, we'll definitely pass that along. But the Warriors really, the Thunder finished the first quarter strong, but then quarter number 2, quarter number 3, the Thunder defense was just completely different, and the Warriors were cooking in the second quarter. So all in all, nice win. We'll get into some thoughts here from each of the four quarters. We'll get to the YouTube chat as well. We'll just kind of recap the first 10 games of this season. But yeah, a lot of Curry down the stretch, a lot of DeAnthony Melton and Jonathan Kuminga in the first half. Kuminga, a spark for the Warriors in that first half. He finished with 20 points. He also had a big dunk. Steve Kerr didn't look like he was going to be in the finishing lineup for the Warriors, but Steve Kerr did go back to him as the Thunder were starting to really make the Warriors sweat, cutting it inside 10, and Kuminga had a big dunk on a lob that was really the starting point of the Warriors being able to stabilize that final little stretch with a couple of defensive stops, a couple of big Steph Curry buckets, and the Warriors able to prevail. And 7 was as close as it got, although after the Rockets game, Greg, and the Warriors being up 30 in the second half, you didn't really want to see it get any closer than 7 if you were a Warriors fan. But they didn't even really have to sweat it out like they did in Houston.
I think it got to 6, if I'm not mistaken. The Caruso dunk after the pass over Draymond's head, I think that was 6, but it's all the same. They survived nonetheless. But yeah, that was something. It's been fun to do these shows, instant reaction post game with you, JD, because these games like the Houston game and the OKC game, they're taking on lives of their own. And so when you think you have your thoughts organized and you're all ready to go, then you got to go back and check a whole bunch of other things because everything else is unfolding right in front of you. So yeah, the Chet Holmgren thing I think is a good leading point, and that really stunk. I think having Chet be somebody who missed his whole rookie year to a foot injury, big men tend to not do so great with the lower body injuries. And so for it to be a hip, I'm just hoping the best for him. I guess what I would say, just with the context of the Chet injury, is I thought, given his absence from the game, I think the Warriors coaching staff did a great job pushing the right buttons of how to make the most of their lineups, given that Chet Holmgren didn't return. They sort of abandoned Trace Jackson Davis from the get-go after a quick 5 minutes. He was a -6 and not very effective. They didn't go to Looney at all, who's been pretty reliable throughout the course of this road trip. And they just rolled with Gary Payton II. They let Draymond play the 5 and had Kuminga in at the 4, closing the lineup. And there's a lot of game balls that could go around in this one. But given that it sort of started and ended with the defense, I will single out Jonathan Kuminga because he continues to have stellar play off the bench and be that scoring spark plug that they need. But also defensively, what he was doing at the end, and the night is going to be the snapshot everybody sees on Twitter. The night happened because Kuminga played great one-on-one defense against Jalen Williams, forced him to a baseline. D'Anthony Melton rotates over the help side, gets the turnover, and that leads to the Curry transition 3. So all in all, the Warriors defense discipline, staying in front of their guy, not fouling as much. I think the reason they struggled so much with OKC last year is that OKC can heat it up in a hurry. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is an incredible free throw shooter, and the Warriors had issues fouling teams a lot in the last couple of seasons. They're not doing that a whole lot to start the year. So to come away with this road trip at 4-1 on the road trip and 8-2 overall, when we were thinking maybe 2-3 was going to be acceptable before they had the Klay reunion game on this Tuesday. I mean, there's really not much more you can ask for early in the season.
No, you can't. And to your point, yeah, it did get down to 6 on that Caruso steal with about 4:12 to go, and that was when Steve Kerr put Kuminga back in the game, and he had a dunk on the next play for the Warriors that put him back up 8. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I like the Warriors starting lineup tonight. Kerr went with D'Anthony Melton, and I do think that the starting lineup of Curry, Melton, Wiggins, Draymond Green, and Trace Jackson Davis, assuming the Warriors want to keep the TJD Draymond Green pairing in the front court, which I think they do. I think having Melton as the guard next to Curry with Wiggins playing the small forward, I think that's the part that works. And I think the Warriors wanted to start the season with that as the starting lineup, but they found themselves in that position where Andrew Wiggins had just come back and Jonathan Kuminga really wanted to play the 3. And I think D'Anthony Melton was a little bit banged up behind the scenes, even though he initially didn't appear on any injury report. And so Kerr rolled with Kuminga at the 3 and Wiggins at the 2 rather, with TJD and Draymond. And then when Steph Curry went out against the Pelicans, Kerr used that as an opportunity to move Kuminga to the bench. Kuminga's been significantly better and really good since he's been coming off the bench. And it sort of freed Kerr up to be able to just get a bunch of these other 5-person groupings in order and get his rotation a little bit more in order. And he's still deciding who he wants to play the 2 on a nightly basis, depending upon, who else he's got. We saw GP2 get the nod there the other night, but I'm with you. The Warriors made the adjustment. No Looney tonight. It was TJD the first 5 minutes of the game. And you look up at the end of the night, and that was it for Trace Jackson Davis. First 5 minutes of the game, Holmgren goes down. They played centerless basketball, and it really allowed their offense to be ignited. And so much of what the Thunder do defensively is a lot of their young wings, but it's also filtering everything toward Chet Holmgren. And so with him out, it did, to your point, make it a lot easier to be, and it's just the right play to look to attack the Thunder in the ways that they did. So Dubs OT with JD and Greg Silver here, KNBR on YouTube and Twitch. As we'll keep this thing rolling for about an hour or so tonight, as the Warriors do get the win over the Oklahoma City Thunder, 127-116. So they are 8-2 to begin the season, a 4-1 trip. Excellent trip for the Golden State Warriors after they started the season 4-1. They're back on Tuesday to take on Klay Thompson and the Dallas Mavericks in the Klay return game, which is another one of these showdown type games. I'm watching Denver and Dallas right now as they go at it in Denver. Denver is leading by 3 toward the end of the third quarter. The Nuggets have been playing better basketball after they got off to a little bit of a slow start. So we'll get into Klay a little bit and his return coming up toward the end of the program. But I wanted to run through some thoughts, just kind of general thoughts. We'll start with that first quarter. Just the defense really wasn't good enough for the Warriors in the first quarter. 33-26 Thunder at the end of the quarter. We talked about the starting lineup, which I liked, and the Warriors ditching it. But then things flip in the second quarter. 39-25, 9 made threes for the Warriors in the second quarter. Completely flipped the game. A lot of small ball both ways. And it really looked like, hey, these are the 2 top defensive teams. Like, there's not, this is an all offense game, but a lot of the games that the Warriors and Thunder played last year had that feel where the Warriors, for whatever reason, the Warriors are pretty comfortable. And I didn't know how this iteration of the Warriors would fare against a Thunder team that really was much more grown up now. I mean, the Thunder and Warriors played all early last year. It was all early in the season. And so the Thunder were kind of an up and coming, hey, this is a cute team that might be in the top 6, really, when the Warriors played them. And then they ended up winning the West in the regular season and had the number 1 overall seed. And so we didn't really, I kind of thought, hey, is this going to be a similar matchup to the ones we saw last year, where the Warriors are just very comfortable playing against this Oklahoma City team, or will have the Thunder graduated in a sense to another level? And I think they're still trying to figure out how to be top flight contenders, especially if they're going to have to play without Holmgren for a significant chunk of time. Now they are going to get Isaiah Hartenstein back at some point from an injury as well. But the point I'm making is the game tonight looked a lot like the games we saw the Warriors play against the Thunder last year in terms of just the Warriors being comfortable going up against them, and just like every head-to-head, opponent is its own series of matchups. And you wouldn't think on paper the Thunder are a good matchup for the Warriors, but when you watch the game play out, the Thunder are kind of a good matchup for the Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, it works in the small lineup for sure. I would say good matchup is interesting when I just say it at the surface, because we know how much that the Warriors coaching staff has liked this Trace Jackson-Davis, Draymond Green front line as more of a long-term option. Tonight, that wasn't the case. And yeah, if you have Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren, who knows how the minutes really play out. But I'm with you in the sense of this iteration of the Warriors, with how much they like to push the pace, shoot a lot of threes, the depth they have can keep guys like Steph fresh for if he needs to go and be the closer like he was tonight. I'm with you that in many ways, it's actually not a bad matchup. Now, OKC is going to be super dangerous, and that actually leads me to the point I wanted to make, which I guess would also be a good way to kind of invite the chat too as to what their opinion on this is. I saw a lot of things scrolling through social media in the timeouts in the fourth quarter about win or lose, the Warriors need to find a way to clean up these collapses. And my overarching takeaway is that, yeah, it wasn't good that you had a 30-point lead and it got all the way down to 6, but I don't see it as a catastrophe in the sense of you were making everything. Steph was off the floor for a lot of this. OKC, being who they are, was eventually going to get hot. Defensively, they weren't great, but outside of the mass turnovers that they were getting in the fourth quarter, like that was the issue I had with the Warriors, is that they weren't not just hitting shots, they were throwing away a lot of possessions. But in terms of OKC making a run, I almost expected that to happen. I was, in a perfect world, that run can get to 15 and not all the way down to 6 for your lead for the Warriors. But in today's NBA, 30 is a lot, but it's not insurmountable for a quarter, and you're on the road and you're trying to close it out. So I'm not saying it was a good thing that OKC gave him a punch in the mouth back so quickly and made it a really dicey game. I also don't view it in the same way that I did maybe the Houston game or a good handful of the other blown leads that we saw this Warriors team have last year.
Yeah, look, Oklahoma City's really good. And you look at the way the Warriors, games flip now in the NBA a lot more quickly than they used to. Big leads get whittled down. Teams come back from 20 plus a lot more than they used to. And so I tend to view it more as the talent disparity isn't great between these two teams. And hell, top to bottom, when it's all said and done, the Thunder could very well wind up being a better team than the Warriors, although the Warriors did match their 8-2 record, handing them their second loss in 10 games. And we'll see what happens with the Suns and the Kings tonight, although the Suns have lost Kevin Durant for at least a couple of weeks as they begin their stretch without him. And so the Suns could be right there at 8-2 as well by the end of the night. They're 8-1. So all told, I mean, maybe it's time to start having the conversation about, could the Warriors potentially be, a contender, and do we need to start looking at them under that lens? Regardless of all that, though, I don't think the blown lead, you have to look at the circumstance. I think people are a little overly concerned with it because it was something that happened last year a lot. And it wasn't, and it was even 6-point leads in 30 seconds and 8-point leads in a minute and a half. Like it was,
and even some of the
that.
games that they held on to win, you were holding your breath for.
Yeah, and so I think you have to look at it individually. I mean, they didn't have Steph Curry in the game in Houston, and blew a 30-point lead, and the game ends up 31-point lead. It goes to overtime. They end up hanging on, and they end up winning that game. Again, it's, if you watch the NBA as we do on a night in, night out basis, teams get down big a lot and then make their run, and then the other team holds on. Like that happens a lot. There are a lot of games where somebody gets up, maybe not 30 or 31, but a team will get up 18-20, and it doesn't mean that the game is just going to stay that way. I mean, and just look at tonight as a prime example. The Warriors were outscored in the first and fourth quarters tonight, 70-46. So for half the game, the Warriors were outscored 70-46. The other half of the game, the Warriors outscored the Thunder 83-46. So that winds up being the difference, right? What I'm saying is, what I'm getting at is, it was half the game where the Warriors were dominant, and then another half the game where the Thunder were a little bit less dominant. And so you wind up adding it all up, and it's, the Warriors win by 11. But I think too often we view games under the lens of, once a team builds a big lead, it's just supposed to be maintained throughout. And I think you could make a case that it getting down to 6 with 4 minutes to go, and then the Warriors putting the game away with Stephen Curry and Kuminga and some good defense and Draymond and all that, that's a testament to winning basketball and a team that's learning how to win. Because I do think they have to shake off what happened last year and the last 2 years with the blown leads. But I guess what I'm saying is, winning the game in Houston and winning the game tonight is an example that they're getting closer to being able to deal with the problem, as opposed to, oh my God, they keep blowing those leads. Like teams are gonna, it's, do you lose the lead and then still win the game? That to me is the bigger issue here.
Yeah. And this kind of goes back to the whole Cleveland issue of why the stinker wasn't such a terrible thing after all. And if you just kind of expand out on the road trip as a whole, hey, you went 4-1 and you lost to the NBA's last undefeated team on the road. Like, that is not by any means a bad thing at all. And I like the point that OPG brings up here in the chat, saying going up 30 on the fifth and final road game is not something that mediocre teams do. I think that's fair. I think building the lead against a team like OKC, yes, you don't want to have 6 turnovers in the fourth quarter, but to be able to get out to the lead and punch a team like that in the mouth, even without one of their better players, I think that's a statement for sure. And it's also a statement internally for how you responded and the energy level. And then on top of all that, I know you'll appreciate this one, JD, because we've had so many conversations about the Warriors can't wait so long to figure it out. I think in 2023 and 2024, they had times in the season where they kind of figure it out by the end in terms of whose role and the lineups and all of that stuff. But to figure it out quickly and adjust on the fly, they had a couple of first quarters that were a little slow on the road trip in Boston. And then tonight, not the best first quarter. And they turned that thing around very quickly to the point where they got a comfortable lead at halftime.
Yeah, just an excellent second quarter. Both teams were shooting it pretty well early on, and the Warriors just exploded in the second quarter with the three ball. Jonathan Kuminga exploded in the second quarter. He hit a couple of threes. Really, really good Kuminga game. I thought he was a part of that flip. And in addition to being a part of the Warriors' ability to close it out, as he ended up back in the game once the Thunder had cut it to 6. Fossey, what's up? What's up, boys? Fossey says, donde está el super reporter from Kenneth Contreras? I am coming to you from Tampa, Florida. I was covering the 49ers and the Buccaneers earlier today for KNBR, and back to the hotel. I got the hotel in the background here, the hotel room. I've got if you see me turning to my left, it's because that's where the television is. So that's what I've got Sunday Night Football on. And then I watched the game to my right tonight. I watched the game on the iPad with the NBA League Pass subscription. So I've got some other games dialed up on the iPad. So if I'm looking to my right, I'm looking at the NBA game, just so the folks know. And if I'm looking to my left and I kind of turn, that's when I'm looking. I know that the NFL game's at halftime. So just to keep everybody updated, if you could just kind of see me doing my usual twitch around.
That 49er game makes the Warriors fourth quarter look like nothing, by the way.
Yeah. Somehow the 49ers figured out a way to get, you want to talk about a bad loss. If the 49ers had lost that game, that would have been a catastrophic loss, given a couple of the ones that they've already had, and given the fact that it obviously would have made them 4-5. But alas, we're going to be spending a good chunk, if not all of the day tomorrow, talking about all of that over on KNBR on the radio. But we definitely want, OPG, the KNBR Tampa studios. Exactly. The remote studios. But that is the beauty of modern technology. Basically, we can set up and do a show from anywhere, which is part of the birth of this Dubs OT show last year and my role at KNBR. So, again, these are the nights that are really special and the days that are really special to be able to do this. And there are going to be some JD travel and road shows here coming up, not only for Dubs OT specifically, and we mentioned one of them next Monday. God, is that a week? That's a week from tomorrow. A week from tomorrow down at Intuit Dome as the Warriors take on the Clippers. And then, there's going to be a few more KNBR Road Studio shows coming up in the next couple of weeks, as the 49ers will be on the road at the end of November and beginning of December. Let's get into the chat a little bit here from the top. And I look. Robert, nice finish, but Warriors and big leads don't go together, apparently. Again, you'd rather be up 30 than up 18. If they'd only been up 18, they would have lost tonight. So that's – and then we're having a different conversation. That goes with our buddy Kenneth Contreras. A win is a win. Paul, I think, has the right spirit. 8-2. Let's go, boys. You mentioned Opie's from earlier, OPG, considering the fifth game on the road. Getting that big lead is impressive. And the Warriors just went through the gauntlet these last 3 games. And I know Chet Holmgren went out, and I know they didn't have Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis in Boston, but the Warriors looked in those 2 games. We can leave Cleveland out of it because that was just an all systems fail clunker. But the Warriors looked in these games like they could hang with the Celtics and the Thunder. So to me, that's the big takeaway. That's the big takeaway for me. And not that we know the answer, but this is the first few tests. And I do think you can lump all 3 games in when you say this. 2 of the 3 games against the teams that have been the 3 best teams in the league, or 3 of the 5 best teams in the league. The Warriors have been up there, and I think we also have to count the Suns in that mix to this point. And the Warriors look like they belonged. So that in and of itself, in addition to the 8-2, I think is my biggest takeaway from the ability to win this game tonight, but also the ability to go 4-1 on the trip.
One of my big takeaways, and it's not necessarily a takeaway from tonight, but it's a takeaway in the difference between last season and this season. And that is Jonathan Kuminga should absolutely not worry about starting versus coming off the bench. And he's certainly playing like he doesn't care, because he has been playing fantastic since he has come off the bench and seems really comfortable in how he's been creating his own offense as well. Like, it feels like he's able to get the 14 to 20 point spark and do it in a way where it doesn't feel like it's that forced. And I know you and I sort of have a thing where it's not ideal if he takes a lot of threes, but I'm cool with him taking threes if they're open and set. Or I guess if he has to keep it at the end of the shot clock and have the lucky one like he did earlier in this trip. But I mean, he's been playing great.
He has been, and he's been, and again, I don't want to be Mr. Redundant here, but it's been twofold. He's been coming off the bench, and he's been playing the 4. I mean, it's just those things have just coincided in all of these games since Steph Curry went down and missed the first game of the 2 against the Pelicans. But no, the Jonathan Kuminga's best games are the games where he's taking really 3 or 4 threes. He makes a couple, even if he doesn't. But you look up at the end of the night and it's 8 of 11. And why is it 8 of 11? It's 8 of 11 because aside from the 2 threes, everything else is basically at the basket. And you know what? I'm going to bring it up here because I do have my NBA. Courtside shot chart deal up here. So I want to get to shooting, and I got to do a little thing here where I can go to Kuminga, just like that. Got to find the right. So yeah, he made 2 threes of his 8 baskets made. 2 threes. There was one little pull-up jumper from about 10 feet, and then it was 5 layups or dunks. So like that, and 12 points in the paint.
And this is a lineup in which he should have been closing because Draymond was playing the 5 for the whole second half. And so Kuminga was rightfully out there in the 4, and it all fit together.
Yeah, no, it all fit together. And I was, and Kerr made the right call. And that's something I want to get to also, whether it's the starting lineup or it's ditching the centers in this one after Chet Holmgren went down. But Steve Kerr's pushing all the right buttons, and I was kind of wondering, because was he going to finish with defense? Because he had GP2 out there. At the 7-minute mark, it was Curry and it was Payton and it was Melton with Wiggins and Draymond Green, and I was wondering, is he going to finish that way? And then when things got down to 6, he made the decision that I think he needed to get more of an offensive threat on the court, and he got Kuminga back out there. That would have been one where had Kuminga not come back into the game and the Warriors end up unable to score enough down the stretch to keep the Thunder at arm's length, I think that's one that would have been talked about after the game and asked about after the game. And rightfully so, given as well as Kuminga had played in the first half. Now, I will say this. He was part of the initial – his worst stretch of the night was part of the initial beginnings of that Thunder comeback really in the middle of the third quarter. And so, and toward the back end of the third quarter and beginning of the fourth quarter. So he was out there then, and it kind of made me wonder, and at the beginning of the fourth quarter, he was out there, and then Kerr got him out with about 9 minutes to go. And when he pulled him out, I don't think he pulled him out with the intention of putting him back in. So there were some mistakes in that stretch. But other than that, again, you can have a bad 3 or 4 minute stretch. We've seen Kuminga. Nobody's perfect. We've seen him have some rough 4 to 6 minute. We've seen him have a rough shift. We'll use the hockey term. And then able to come back, and you look up at the end of the night, and it's like, oh, Kuminga got 4 shifts, and 3 of the 4 were really good. And I thought tonight was a night where he basically got 3 shifts, and 2 of them were outstanding. The one in the first half, and the one that closed the game in the final 4 minutes.
We also have a question about somebody that has been good to this point of the season, but not so much tonight. Joke's on you, asking us, did I miss any takes on Brandon Podziemski? I did a lot of nothing, at least he did tonight. And not loving the 3, can't create. How can a guard be so bad at free throws? JD and Greg, thoughts? I'll let you take a crack at this one first.
Well, it was a rare, not great Brandon Podziemski night. And guess what? He played 15 minutes. So Kerr got him out of there. And I know he's been a little under the weather on the trip. I don't want to make excuses for him, but I think part of the depth is that guaranteed minutes are guaranteed to no one. So not everybody's going to play well every night. Tonight was a bad game, but to me, tonight was a bad Podziemski game. And to Jokes on you, it was a bad Podziemski game, but okay, like they've figured out it was a good Kuminga game. So so it was a great Melton game. So and I think that's the hope. As long as you trust Steve Kerr to manage it, it's the fact that if a guy's not having a real good game, you can have enough other players that are to where you can cobble together a 5-player group. And it's really 3 players around Steph and Draymond who are going to be playing. And you've got enough to win the game. So, again, there's going to be times where Podziemski's playing excellent, and we've seen that in the beginning of this year, and other guys maybe aren't, and then those guys are going to get 10 to 15 minutes or less. It wasn't a good Trace Jackson-Davis game. He was bad in the first 6 minutes and didn't play again the rest of the night. And you know what? That's okay, because Tuesday might be a bad Kuminga game, but a really good Moody game. Tuesday might be a good Podziemski game, but a bad Buddy Hield game. And then he winds up playing more, or DeAnthony Melton doesn't play as much. So I don't know if I directly answered the question, Erwin Kwong. That's exactly strength in numbers power. Now, where that strength can become a weakness is if you can't designate the right guys on the right night. And so we've seen the last couple of years, even though Steve Kerr has said that he believes in the depth of his teams, one, this team's far deeper than the teams the Warriors have had last year or the last 2 years. But 2, he's doing a better job of managing it, Greg. I mean, that's just real. That's just truth.
Yeah, certainly. And the thing I would say on Podziemski is, yeah, he's certainly not a 3-point sniper in the way that a lot of guards can be in today's modern NBA. The thing about Podziemski in terms of shooting the threes and getting his free throw percentage up, that's stuff that he can certainly work on and improve throughout his career. So I'm not terribly concerned with that. I think the other thing is that Podziemski certainly is a type of player that could be in a closing lineup, but I don't think that even if he's having a good game, it's a guarantee that he's in the closing lineup. Like, I think Andrew Wiggins is someone where you would like to have in the closing lineup if he's on that night because of what he can do defensively and also create his own shot and finish inside. I think Kuminga is someone that you would like to feel comfortable putting in the closing lineup. But Podziemski can have a pretty decent game, and he could be replaced out there by DeAnthony Melton or Gary Payton II down the stretch, or heck, even Kyle Anderson, who can do a little bit of more ball handling, offensive generating duties out there if Draymond Green's getting a breather and such. And so I think Podziemski, he's under the weather, hasn't been that great since the illness, but I just think it's a very small sample size early in the year. And the good news, to your point, JD, and to Erwin Kwong's point, is they have had a lot of guys that they can go to. And so far it's working in terms of players have the right attitude and the right approach of staying ready when their number's called, knowing that it might be their night and they might not. And that's a hard thing. But the players seem pretty bought in 10 games. And I would say a big reason for that is when you win, it's a lot easier to do so. 8-2 start certainly helps with that.
Well, and the other thing is, and I think you're spot on with the guys who are. I think Steph and Draymond are always closers, unless something crazy's going on in a given night, or one of them's injured, or somebody gets ejected, or there's other guys that are really playing well. Like it would take a much better night from multiple players to not have Draymond finish a game. Obviously, Steph's going to be out there if it matters, no matter what. But Wiggins is the third guy who I will not say is 100% guaranteed, but the most guaranteed to be out there. And so you look at the balance of Steph and Draymond and then Wiggins, and okay, Wiggins is your 3 in that instance as a baseline. It doesn't mean it's going to be that way every night, but Wiggins is your 3, and Steph's going to be your 1. Draymond's either going to play the 4 or the 5 in that instance. So if he's playing the 4, it means TJD or Looney are going to be out on the court in all likelihood. I guess it could be Kyle Anderson on a night, but I don't think we're going to see that. Or Kuminga's going to be out there, and he's going to be, the most likely player to be playing the 4 if Draymond's closing at the 5 is Kuminga. So then he gets his opportunity that way to be out there. And then you've got the guard spot next to Steph, and that could be Podziemski. That could be Melton. That could be Buddy Hield, and depending upon. And then you also
I didn't even include Buddy in that conversation.
And it might be 2 of those guys, and maybe not Kuminga on another night, or it might be Moses Moody and not Kuminga on another night, depending upon so that is a wide group of 6 players, I think, that I just mentioned, because I think the 2 bigs are in their own category, and the 3 that are 99.9% of the time I think are going to be out there. Now, if Wiggins is having a terrible game and Moses Moody's having a real good game, or Buddy Hield maybe plays the 3 because you go with Hield, Melton, and Steph, or Hield, Podziemski, and Steph, something like that. Like there's options within the baseline, but I do think you need a stable baseline, and I think the baseline is Steph, Draymond, Wiggins.
I would agree with that as well. And Kuminga certainly could be a 4th guy if he's playing like he did tonight, and you can have Draymond out there at the 5 and it all works.
But he's not an every night guy any more than Buddy or Podziemski or Melton or Moody or any. It's a depend on the night group.
No, I would agree with that too. I think Wiggins is probably the only one where if he's on, he's going to be out there. Anyone else, it's like, yeah, you might be having a good night, but maybe it's not. Or maybe you get spot subbed. I know we don't have a traditional Sounds of Silver today just because we're not in the radio studio doing our normal thing. We'll be back there on Tuesday, of course. But
although we're cooking up, not to, I do think since we're not on the air, we can let the people in a little bit. I mean, I mentioned, I've got the road kit going, the road studio here with in the hotel room, but you are in a studio, and you're at KNBR in the studios there. If anybody could cook up the ability to be able to play sound and all of that, we could play around with it. The opportunities are endless, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Now you're correct.
Maybe even take some calls. We could maybe even take some calls if we did it this way from another studio. Just on-air production.
Yeah, no, now I have to put my own self on the spot and say that the downfall of all of that is that the person assigned to cutting Warriors postgame today is yours truly, which, of course, will be done after the show. So I do want to look into being able to play some sound here from the board, but as of right now, we don't have the sound. And Erwin,
that's okay.
Erwin laughing, saying, making me, yeah, I'm getting assignments thrown at me, Erwin. It's okay. It's welcome to the life of a producer. JD actually treats me very well. But all that to say, and I digress, is that Steve
you should
Kerr,
see how many cords and cables I've got going right here. You'd be mortified.
He's committed. He's committed to the grind. But this coming from Anthony Slater of The Athletic is that Steve Kerr said he plans to keep D'Anthony Melton as the starting two, and he wants the Curry, Melton, Wiggins, Draymond, Trace Jackson Davis group to be the starting lineup moving forward. We'll get to that sounds when we're able to sort out the great technology, but that's kind of our big headline in our little pseudo sounds of silver here.
Yeah, I think that's the best lineup. I was open to the lineup with Melton and Draymond at 5, Wiggins 3, Kuminga 4, Draymond 5. That was the lineup that I specifically said I would have started the year with. But they want to put TJD in there and keep Draymond from playing too much 5. And they like the numbers, basically. Steve Kerr said their analysis of those two together really makes the Warriors elite defensively and the film. And so they like that. If you're going to do that, though, Wiggins is going to be out there just because I think Wiggins is a starting player. And then it becomes you've got Steph, and do you go shooting at that other spot, or do you go with another defender at that other spot? And I think Melton, to Kerr's point, gives them the best of both worlds in terms of a tenacious defender, somebody who can handle the ball, but somebody who can also make an open 3 if the ball finds him. And I think that's what D'Anthony Melton has been able to do throughout the course of his career. So I like the lineup. And again, we were chatting about this a little bit during the game. The fact that starting Kuminga is not a thing anymore, that Steve Kerr has to think needs to be done. Otherwise, Kuminga is going to be pissed off and unhappy. The fact that is like Kerr was able to move Kuminga off, because that was the big thing at the beginning of the year was you want Melton in there, but if Melton's in there, then that means you either can't start TJD, who you want. And I don't think Steve Kerr was ready at the beginning of the year to say to Wiggins or Kuminga, you're not starting, because I think they wanted to give Kuminga that opportunity. And I think they truly needed and wanted to lean into Wiggins at the beginning of the year in terms of this being a major comeback year for him off of the last 2 years being so difficult. So as Steve Kerr often says, sometimes the lineups and the rotations and all that have a way of working themselves out. And I think it's odd to say, but the Steph Curry injury allowed for him to go away from Kuminga as a starting 3. Kuminga has thrived as a bench 4, and it has now in turn allowed the Warriors to get a look at some other guys next to Curry in the backcourt without having to worry about Wiggins being the 2, and he slides to the natural position. I mean, nobody on the Warriors roster is more of a true 3 than Andrew Wiggins. I think he's actually the only bona fide 3 on the entire roster. The next closest guy is probably Moses Moody, but they don't have a lot of those guys who have that skill set. So I think having Wiggins in that spot is really beneficial.
Yeah, and I would say tonight with the starting lineup kind of confirmed your early season suspicions that D'Anthony Melton maybe was a little bit banged up. They were trying not to put too much on him early, but they felt like if healthy, that would be a go-to guy against good teams. Like the Thunder game, I look at this one, you're finishing the road trip, you're trying to go 4-1. That was a very serious lineup to go and put Melton out there. It's like, okay, we're being serious. And yeah, they tweaked the starting lineup eventually, but it wasn't the Melton piece of it. It was the Trace Jackson Davis piece. And D'Anthony Melton was out there closing. When he's able to hit threes, and he hit 4 of them there in the first half, it just further justifies having him out there.
No, it really does. And I think we're getting a little bit of what Steve Kerr truly wants, which you had referenced there. Andis Brown, Melton should be the starting 2, but I have a bad feeling Melton will be in and out of the lineup all season. I think that's also true. I do think we could see D'Anthony Melton out there, in and out. I think they're going to be careful with him, because I think they believe that if they can get into the playoffs, he's going to be a 16 game type of a player, a guy that you're going to want. And I think you mentioned it to me during the show, during the game rather, the fact that And I just lost my train of thought, and I'll tell you why. I was
going to say Suns Kings coming down to the wire.
No, it was Nuggets Dallas.
Ah.
It was Denver. It was Denver and Dallas, and so I looked over for just a split second to watch the final possession as Dallas ended up with Kyrie Irving going for a 3 at the win and the win in Denver off the inbounds. He got a good look, hit the back of the rim, and it didn't go in. And Jokic got the rebound, and the Nuggets get the win, 122 to 120. Shot was a little bit off from the left wing.
So Jokic goes 37 points, 18 rebounds, 15 assists on 13 of 21 shooting.
Yeah. The demise, and I'm throwing myself into this. The demise of the Nuggets may have been spoken of too soon, because they've gotten on a heater after the first couple of games, and they tricked one away. Was it in Phoenix? They tricked one away. I think they had a big lead in Phoenix and ended up blowing that one. FL Dubs fan, 36 points for the 36-year-old, and in 36 minutes, only Steph Curry. Stephen Curry was excellent closing the game tonight. Excellent. And I mean, just a great Steph Curry night. Big time. I mean, just a big time, dominant 7 threes. I mean, here's the other thing we haven't talked about in depth. The Warriors made 21 threes tonight. You don't lose very often when you make 21 threes. They had 35 assists on 45 makes. The Warriors don't lose very often when they do that, Greg. And then you go to Steph, good night we talked about Curry. Melton had 19. Wiggins had a pretty efficient 18. They rebounded the ball well, out-rebounded the Thunder 46-41 in this game. And, Steph was 7 assists. Draymond had the ball moving. Wiggins had 5 assists. Kyle Anderson had 5 assists in 20 minutes and 5 boards. I mean, kind of the mini Draymond game for Kyle Anderson, 6-5-5 for Kyle Anderson. So they got there was a lot of really good offense. And look, offense always looks good when you're making threes at that level, but the ball movement was there. And I think we've seen why the Warriors are so intent on taking a lot of threes this year if they're good looks, because they think they have the depth up and down the roster to be able to have a lot of nights like this where almost regardless of who you play, you have a talented enough team on any given night to make 23s. And if you make 23s, in all likelihood, you're probably going to win that game regardless of who you play. So it just in the math of it, and I hate to sound like Farhan Zaidi, but the math of it is you just give yourself more chances to have that hot night by taking more shots. And so and if you do it consistently, there are going to be nights where you just win because you shoot it in that way. So San Jose Jazz fan 4, Pods is a Farhan type player. There, I said it. I don't know that he is a Farhan type player. He maybe in terms of plus minus, but I don't feel like. I don't know. I feel like he's also more of a player evaluation scouting type player in terms of his skill set, because you have to see the skill set and you have to see the skill set and the things he does well and how it actually connects to everybody else.
That's true. I was going to say the plus minus thing is real, but he also is very much an eye test kind of guy.
Very much an eye test kind of guy. Very much an eye test kind of guy. So yeah, let's say more in the chat. I'll let you throw a few up there. I've gotten a little bit behind.
Yeah, well, while I kind of roll through it, I'll also kind of throw out here on your point on the offense what I put out there on social media, because I found this very fascinating and what proved to be the turning point that just blew the game open for the Warriors and created a big enough lead to where they could hang on when OKC made their run late. And that's the offense. They went inside 5 straight possessions to start the second half. And that was with a small lineup because Gary Payton II was out there for Trace Jackson Davis. And they made a point to attack the interior which was very interesting. They got that successful challenge on the DeAnthony Melton charge that was then overturned. And then all of a sudden, it opened up the perimeter. Steph got going. And once Steph got going, then I think you saw the beauty of this team and the different skill sets of what people can do and how that can help. Because back-to-back possessions, he got doubled. I think the first one was Kuminga finding Wiggins, or maybe it was Anderson finding Wiggins. And then the second one that led to a timeout was the either Kuminga or Anderson, whichever one didn't have the assist before, found a wide open Buddy Hield. And everything just broke down because you got to guard Steph Curry from 35 feet out. So to have Steph be able to play 36 minutes, you might not get that luxury every night, but these are the type of opponents when you're going to have to do it. I love the intent of attacking inside, and then everything just opened up as you went farther and farther out of the paint in that third quarter. Keep going on with the chat here as I'll let you respond.
No, and look, and you can play Steph 36 minutes because he hasn't had to play 36 minutes a lot or at all at any point so far this season. It's where the games that they've played and some of the leads that they've had and the ability to have so many different players that can contribute, it sets you up to not have to play them every single night, 35, 36 minutes just to win the game. And so it just, you can, I don't want to say save him, but you can kind of save him for a night like tonight. And I know people are thinking, well, maybe he could rest the fourth quarter tonight with where the Warriors had the game going into the fourth quarter and after dominating the second and third quarters and up 28 and all of that. But it's nice against a good team, maybe even a great team, where things start to get a little bit dicey, and that can be the night that you extend. If you're going to say, hey, Steph Curry's going to have to expand the number of minutes you want him to play by 5 or 6 minutes, you want it to be on the road against Oklahoma City that gives you a chance to win that game.
Yeah, absolutely. Just reading through some of the chat here too. Some good points. Shout out to Jib Sow, and sorry if I'm not saying that right. We got a Boston guy tuning in to Dubs OT and loving the 8-2 start. So appreciate you. Continue to get in the YouTube chat. It's the best place to be on the entire internet. And then we got a couple discussions about what do you do with the roster? Is it too deep to where you got pieces to move around? Our buddy Alpha, JD and Greg, great win tonight. Excited about the possibilities and potential of this team. Still leaning toward them needing cash in a few depth pieces for a reliable number 2. If possible, Robert keeps making me wonder if they'll stand pat or try to swing a big trade. And I do think, for as nice as the start's been, if they keep winning, people will be happy, but the conversation will get progressively louder as the trade deadline looms.
It is, and here's the reality of that conversation. And we touched on it a little bit the other night. We talked about it on Just Dubs yesterday on KNBR. It's the fact that they're going to have to internally wrestle with the question of, is this team so well connected and has such good vibes that you just want to let it play out for an entire season and see what you have, versus that impatience that Mike Dunleavy Jr. spoke of in his season opening press conference, because they want and wanted, clearly, if you followed him over the summer, to do something major, to do something big. And Andis Brown, spot on. Any big trade, you'll have to worry about the team chemistry. And that is not going to be lost on Steve Kerr. I can already hear Steve Kerr in Mike Dunleavy's office, and maybe with Joe and Kirk Lacob around, and they're, all right, what are we going to do? And Steve's like, I love this team. If we do it, we better be sure we get it right. And I think that type of thinking has been why some have been frustrated, because it's led to inaction at different points, and the feeling of, oh, you're wasting a year of Steph and this and that. But there's no question, it's the chicken and the egg. Is this team where they are because of the depth, Or if you pick the right pieces to keep and the right guys to go, can you look to get a number two? And again, who are we talking about as far as a number two? Are we talking about Giannis? Are we talking about Jimmy Butler? Because they're different levels. Giannis is one level of number two. Jimmy Butler's another level of number two. Those are the two guys that I think everybody's kind of wondering what the heck's going to happen if there's if the Bucks continue to play as poorly as they have, if Miami decides that they want to get a little bit younger. But here's the other part. If you do look to go get somebody that's been an all-star and been that guy, then that also means big salary. And so it means you have to give up young players and a salary. So it's not just, I'll use really both of these guys. If you trade Jimmy Butler, you probably have to give up Wiggins and Kuminga to get Jimmy Butler. And so, because of the salary, if you get Giannis, and you might say, well, duh, for Giannis, it's worth it. And I think in all likelihood, yeah, to me, if you could get Giannis, and it wouldn't just be Wiggins and Kuminga, it'd be Wiggins and Kuminga and probably 4 first-round picks and other players. But the thing you're going to have to grapple with is the fact that you're going to end up taking two. It's not just, you don't get to just trade Kyle Anderson and DeAnthony Melton and Moses Moody, and then you get Giannis, and you still have Kuminga, and you still have Wiggins, and you still have all the. So it's a lot easier said than done when the Warriors have to look at what's out there and available to them. And so I think that, because there's no way to really do it from a financial standpoint if you aren't including Wiggins. Like if I'm the Warriors, just from a basketball standpoint alone, if it came down to give up Kuminga, Moody, and 4 first-round picks, like, of course you would do that. But it isn't that simple. And so, and you could have Giannis and Wiggins and Podziemski, and Steph still around, and, maybe Melton still around or whatever. Like then you can figure out a way to cobble it together at that point, Greg. But again, you can't just make these fantasy trades where you get to keep everybody you like and not have it change the trajectory to where it could in some ways limit your ceiling for a year, because it might limit your ceiling this year, but then allow, if you can go out and get the right pieces around the guy that you're able to acquire, it may wind up helping your situation next year. And if it's going to help your situation next year, then why not wait to the offseason to do it? You can kind of have the best of both worlds. Like, all of these things, I'm not saying I have an answer, because it's only November the 10th. And as we get closer to the deadline and which players might be available and all of those different things, we can hash out what would be worth it and what wouldn't be worth it. And we can see how some of these other guys are playing for the Warriors between now and then. But a lot of these things are the questions that are going to have to be grappled with internally.
Isn't the trade discussion so fun and how quickly it changes? Because last year it was a lot of, well, yeah, you'd like to trade Andrew Wiggins if you could get something for him, but his trade value is super low, and then you might be worse for it if you just get rid of him to get rid of him. Now it's like you're getting a pretty good version of Andrew Wiggins, and our boy Douglas Mike's chiming in. All us Wiggins believers feeling good this season, throwing out his averages too. And it's like, when you get this version of Andrew Wiggins, I actually don't want to trade him, because you look at a team like OKC, and he was part of a really good defensive unit down the stretch there. And the only piece out there that I wasn't super trusting of defensively was Steph, but that's not anything new. And you're not going to not have Steph Curry on the floor in a game like that when he closes how he did. So I think the defense it started and ended with the defense, this 8-2 run. So if you get this version of Wiggins, I say you don't do it unless you can get like a big superstar kind of guy like Giannis, who still is at an age where it's like, okay, like that is the future of your franchise.
I mean, it's twofold, right? If you say who would be worth it, I think Giannis, and look, that's such an extreme answer, but Giannis.
It's only not extreme because the Warriors got Kevin Durant.
Well, Giannis, the answer for Giannis, though, is Giannis might be the only guy where you're comfortable saying, okay, I'm going to not have Wiggins on the team anymore, but we've got Giannis. And then also say, well, he's the one guy that you'd be open to moving Kuminga for because you're so high on Kuminga's potential future. So it in a way, but what are the lesser versions of that? Like what is the, like, that's the extreme scenario. What are the lesser versions of, well, maybe it's not one, maybe it's Wiggins and not Kuminga, or maybe it's Kuminga and, other play like that. That's the part that I don't think we have a clear picture of. But I think Giannis is the one guy. Like, if you would do it for Giannis, would you do it for Jimmy Butler? Like, it's like, to me, I would want Jimmy Butler. I would do Kuminga for Butler, but I would want Wiggins to be on the team. But you can't do the deal without Wiggins being included in the deal. So it's like, because to me, if you're getting Jimmy Butler, but you're losing both of those guys, maybe you're playoff better.
Yeah.
But it's tricky. But you're also older. You're also getting a lot older at that point. But you've got a number 2 for these next couple of years. And you got to pay him. And because Wiggins is still young. He's going to be 30 in February. So you're aging the wrong direction in a guy who would have to basically take on the Wiggins role in Jimmy Butler, only better.
Yeah. And then who are the other ones? Zach LaVine, always talked about, but he's got a crazy contract. Brandon Ingram, another one who we thought might get moved in the offseason and didn't. A couple of listeners chiming in on Ingram. Robert,
I'm intrigued. They're not giving up Wiggins for. And they're not giving Wiggins. They're not giving up Wiggins for Ingram because Ingram doesn't defend like that. I think they feel Wiggins gives them enough of what when Wiggins is right, Wiggins gives him enough of what Ingram provides him offensively, and he's a better defender, and he fits better in the context of what the Warriors do.
We have Andis Brown. I'm losing all the chats now. He says, I know the Bulls have pieces they want to move. Would you want Vucevic? Doesn't want LaVine.
Vucevic is interesting. Vucevic is interesting. LaVine's off the books. I've said, I screamed from the mountaintops not to trade Wiggins for LaVine, and a lot of people thought I was crazy, and I still would not trade Wiggins for LaVine. No freaking chance.
Yeah, we were aligned in that one in the offseason. As bad as it was going, heading into free agency, what was it, Chris Paul and Wiggins for Zach LaVine? They said no.
People were so down on Andrew Wiggins that, and again, I've said this a lot, it's not addition by subtraction. It's just not. And would you say that you think Andrew Wiggins is addition by subtraction now if you took him off this team? And I think we already know. I mean, I think he's proven it in the first 3.5 weeks of the season that's not, like, because he hasn't been out. He hasn't been, and here's the other part. He hasn't been 2022 Wiggins. But he also hasn't been 2023 or 2024 Wiggins.
Exactly.
From the last 2 seasons. He's been in between. Exactly. He's been not quite as good as two-way finals Wiggs, but he's been a lot better than 2023 missing the end of the regular season, comes back in the playoffs Wiggs, and the guy who missed a lot of time last year as well and couldn't get his game right even when he was there.
Yeah, no, it's in between, and I would argue probably a little closer to 2022 Wiggins than the last couple of years just because of the consistency factor alone. And by the way, he's actually shooting it better too. So he can play offense, which was not really there at all the last couple of years.
Right. Exactly. By the way, it is a final. They went to overtime in Phoenix, and the Kings ended up winning in overtime. The Kings might be the big early winner of no Kevin Durant for the Suns because they played him tonight in Phoenix and they play him Wednesday night in Sacramento. So as great as the Suns were playing, and I think the Kings have basically been a different version of the same to this point. DeRozan's played really well for them, but they lost the other night to the Clippers, and they're, I think, 6-4 now with the win tonight. I may be off by a game on that, but anyway, I think they're 6-4, but they were not going to be beating the Suns with Kevin Durant the way that they've been playing and the way the Suns have been playing. Maybe once, but not twice. And I think now they've got an opportunity maybe to beat them twice, so they can kind of flip things in a more positive direction.
Well, I might add
for them, but that means that the Warriors now are at the top of the Western Conference, and that was the reason I actually brought it up in the first place. And yeah, so the Warriors, Suns, and Thunder all now tied at 8-2 atop the Western Conference. The Celtics are 9-2 in the East, and the Cavs won again since the Warriors lost to them on Friday night to improve to 11-0. So yeah, Warriors pretty firmly entrenched right now in the top 5 of the NBA, and right now equal at the top of the Western Conference, thanks to that Sacramento Kings victory in Phoenix against the Suns.
So when everybody down here has anger at the Kings for knocking the Warriors out of the play-in tournament last year, just know there's a NorCal alliance tonight.
For one night, yes. For one night. The Kings help the Warriors get into the top of the Western Conference. Let's roll for a couple of more minutes here, and let's do. You want to do more chat? You want to do a little more chat? I'm going to check my notes while you're kind of going through the chat a little bit. Well, no cap 757. That's a good one. Warriors won't make a trade though, because according to them, trades are hard. Trades are hard.
Hey, that statement's aging pretty well as of right now. All things considered, that statement has aged much better than people were giving it a hard time for.
They didn't want to make a horrible trade, so they didn't do anything. And they tried to build the best possible team they could while not using what happened.
Oh, the lights went out on me, so I had to.
You had to do the motion. You had to do the motion detector. So yeah, no, I think you look. I was checking on the football game. I was kind of ticked off because I couldn't get there. I was getting an error message when I was trying to watch the Suns Kings OT, so I actually didn't see any of it. And then the score popped up, and I was like, "Damn it, I didn't get to see." I had some error on the iPad. So anyway, I tangent to kind of let you set up the chats here.
Well, Fozzie's saying in quotes, Giannis is a child from Jaylen Brown. Did you see that whole thing?
I did. I found it. I thought it was. I don't know. I thought it was all in good fun.
Yeah, I thought it was. I was like, if this was April, I would totally respect the anger and be like, wow, Jaylen Brown's just gonna be angry for the entirety of the playoffs. But I'm like, dude, it's November. Like, it's all good.
Yeah, no, it's definitely all good. What else do we have in the chat here, Greg?
We got a lot of people saying no on Jimmy Butler through that whole discussion. No, Jimmy Butler. Okay. Jimmy isn't the same guy. Little talk about Brandon Ingram. Jimmy Butler's too old. He's a liability. Giannis is 6'11". Jimmy Butler is not.
How would people think? I mentioned this a little bit a couple minutes ago, but what would people think? There is a certain portion of the Warrior fan base that would go absolutely ballistic at this thought. But is it the wrong decision if this team continues to roll to just let it play out as they are and see how close or far away you are, knowing that you probably can't win a title? But what if you could get to a conference finals? What if you could get to it? Because I'm starting to be more open-minded to the fact that if this team can get a top 4 seed, I think they can win a first-round series. If they can win a first-round series, then it depends on your matchup in the second-round series. Like, where are you in the bracket? Who are you playing? Can Steph and Draymond carry you to 1 series? I think they can. Can they carry you to 2? Maybe more matchup specific. I don't think you can win a title with this team, at least right now. but you never know they would have to prove to me, oh wow, they're that good. Like they would have to continue, 8-2, 8-2, 8-2 a few more times would do it. I mean, you tell me this team's 16-4, 24-6, 30 games into the season, we're probably going to be having a different conversation come right around New Year's. Rebel the sounds, let it play out. But would you be comfortable with, hey, this team wins 52 games, is a 4 seed, wins a round, gets beat in the second round, goes home, and that's another year of Steph's prime, back end of his prime, gone. But you also see exactly a full year of clarity of who your keepers are, who your guys maybe you'd be willing to move. Again, when you're a GM and you're a front office organization, you have to be willing to make these decisions in real time and very quickly. And if an opportunity presents itself, you need to be able to adjust accordingly. And so that is the job, and it's not an easy one, that Mike Dunleavy is going to have to do. Andis Brown, I'd be happy with that. I'm not sure Lacob would be happy. Lacob has insane expectations. Well, he has insane expectations, but he didn't want to trade Jonathan Kuminga for Paul George or Lauri Markkanen. I think it was more the Jazz didn't want Kuminga for Markkanen. But
yeah, the asking price for Danny Ainge on that was ridiculous.
He has high expectations, but he's also allowed for them to play it out. I mean, I don't disagree with I think both things are equally true. Shout out Ralph Barbieri. But I don't know. I think you have to weigh it consistently.
Yeah. I think it's a good discussion to have at 8-2, a much better discussion than if they were 4-6 right now. And we didn't know what anyone's role was. And maybe Kuminga was upset with coming off the bench. Like right now, it's good to talk about the trades in a broad scale, knowing that seemingly there's a lot of internal peace within that locker room.
Yeah. And again, the good start is exactly why there's internal peace. And I'll use the 49ers as an example of, you think the 49ers lose the game today and are able to recover from some of the stuff that happened with like Deebo Samuel and Tabor Pepper and Jake Moody and all?
Or which one of the 12 defensive penalties on that drive for the Bucs to tie the game?
I mean, if you have the things that went wrong, and you would have had to have had, I guess, another couple go wrong for them to actually lose the game. If that had happened, I mean, eventually you reach a breaking point. And so the winning part matters. Like the winning matters. And then you can, if you're Kyle Shanahan, try to rally everybody together one more time. But if you don't win and you've been with the same group for a long time, things start to fracture, I think, a little bit. I think that, not to use this as a segue into Klay Thompson's return on Tuesday night, but I think that is part of the reason why things did become more fractured with Klay Thompson as the time went on, 2 years ago toward the end of the year and ultimately last year when you look at the way things ended. So, Robert, it's funny. Celtics didn't have Brown, and then the Thunder don't have Chet. That's fair. San Jose Jazz fan, no Chet, no Hartenstein, asterisk win. I don't believe in asterisk wins, but I do think you can, to me, you get credit for the win, and we can make it's more of a footnote. Like I'm a believer in, I'm going to look back and I'm going to say, hey, these 2 wins that the Warriors have had are their 2 best wins of the season. To win in both of those buildings and to win in OKC at the end of a trip, incredibly impressive. But at the bottom of my notes from tonight, it'll be Chet was out. At the bottom of my notes from tonight, or from Wednesday night last week, was Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis were out. Does that mean the Warriors would have lost the game if those guys had? I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe not. We'll never know. I think it does make future matchups where those guys are playing and you'd only have the chance to get one of them with Boston, make them a lot more interesting. But So yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing that again goes in it goes in the bank of how we analyze everything.
Yeah, no, for sure. Good chat session today. I'm loving scrubbing through the chat here. Everyone's RIP to Chet Holmgren's hip. I'm also looking at Sunday Night Football and all this.
Yep.
7 interceptions through 3 quarters combined.
Yeah,
Jared
both
Goff
ways.
has 5 and Stroud's got 2.
Well, it's funny. Every time I've looked over at the football game tonight, every time I've looked over, the Lions are moving the ball and then they don't score, and I'm like, what the hell happened? Like every time I swear to every time I've looked, the Lions are like, oh, here's a big run. Oh, here's a big pass play, and then I'm like, I'm expecting to like see the score 30-23 Lions or 30-30. And it's like, oh, the Lions are still on 13. The heck? But yeah, that's you told the story, my friend.
Maybe this is the night for the Lions, like the Warriors for the Cavs. You know, they'll be 7-2 after the fact, and they'll say you're allowed a stinker because of how you took care of business in other ways. Maybe that's just what it's all setting up to be, and the world revolves around Dubs OT.
And the world revolves around Dubs OT. Let's get a couple of more in the chat, and we can do some fun with numbers tonight before we close it out here on Dubs OT with JD. And wow, what a good night tonight. Good night tonight. It was a good crowd tonight as well in the room tonight. Much better crowd tonight. Tonight, much more in line with the Boston game than the Washington game or the Cleveland game. Opponent and outcome may be important.
I think so. I think that's what we're learning today. Let's see. Going through the chats. Oh man, lots of good ones. Drew Down, who's changed his name to Drew Buddy, going with the boohoo. I don't care. I got that drop on my board. YK. If you could add one type of player to the team that would make you confident in the Warriors would reach the finals, who or what would that player be?
Well, I gave you the Bobby Portis answer the other night, but I think we had like 30 people watching instead of 130. So I'll say it for the people that are actually here tonight. I like Bobby Portis as a role player that I think could help the Warriors. I think if there's one thing this team is missing, I won't spend 5 minutes talking about this like I did the other night, but if there's one specific skill that I think the Warriors are missing, it's a big who can really shoot the 3-ball extremely well, like a guy who can play center. And I think Bobby Portis can do that, and Bobby Portis is tough. He's got a little bit of edge to him. He's kind of a likes to mix it up and likes to fight guy. So I think he would bring an element of that to the Warriors, which is good. I think he would be a fan favorite at Chase. Also, I think Warrior fans would love that energy and that smoke that Bobby Portis wants to bring to the table. So non clear-cut number 2 all-star type guy, I would go with Bobby Portis.
FL Dubs fan says JD's correct, like a Nas Reed type. Yeah, well, if Nas Reed was the version of Nas Reed against the Warriors, that'd be like the second best player by far.
Yeah, it really would be. It really would be. But yeah, just anybody who's got that skill set. Nas Reed, obviously is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
With especially after the Timberwolves traded Karl Anthony Towns, but to me that's and not somebody that's like a 12th man like a Dario Saric, like somebody that's actually a legitimate 6, 7, 8th man, and been doing it for a little bit in his NBA career. Yeah, Paul, seeing that Chet fall as an old man is not safe for work. It was bad. Like, it was really bad. Did we get an update, by the way? Did we see anything on Chet? I want to look at I'm going to check here real quick. On Twitter or X. Hip pointer.
Yeah.
It's potential hip pointer. Okay, well, that's good. Looks worse than it is. Could miss some games, but not a long-term injury. That's good.
Okay, that's huge.
Yeah, no, that is good. Like you're hoping that obviously it's not something where like it's a broken hip that requires surgery or anything like that. So we shall see. I haven't looked at anything else, and he didn't talk tonight. So it looks like that's the early read on it. But yeah, that would be really, really, really tough if Chet Holmgren ended up in a position where he had to miss a significant amount of time. That would be a big time bummer. I did see a quote from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. How did the game change without Chet Holmgren? It changed a lot. This is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Changed a lot for us defensively, as you can probably tell. And then he went on to say, if Chet has to miss games, everybody's going to have to rebound and get stops to rebound. So yeah, we shall see.
I've got my last sound of silver, my last quote of silver. And this one is a nice little segue into our next show because that is going to be bumping. Anthony Slater, The Athletic, again in the locker room asking Steph Curry, what will Klay Thompson's return on Tuesday be like? And the answer is, I don't know. We've had homecomings before, but nothing like this.
Yeah, it is going to be. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be emotional, and it's going to be 18,000 Captain Klay hats on Tuesday night over at Chase, and there is the added element of the Warriors are 8-2 and clicking, and the vibes have been great, and that's not, Tuesday is not, and the next couple of days are not to speak to maybe a rough ending to Klay Thompson's Warriors career. It's more to speak to everything that he brought during the heyday and the great years of Klay Thompson's career and years that ended in championships. But the sheer competitiveness of Steph and Draymond and Steve and the Warriors organization and Klay Thompson for that matter, and the Mavs are going to want to get one for Klay, and the Warriors are going to want to kick his ass, as they've said a few different times, and odd. It will be really odd to see 18,000 captain hats in a building that's basically rooting for, for a guy that's on the other team. It's unique. It's unique to see something. I can't, and I know that was the goal for the Warriors, but I'm trying to think, like, has there ever been anything like that in sports where your giveaway is for the visiting player that's competing against you? It's
I wasn't alive for Michael Jordan's return, or maybe I technically was. Jordan returned to the Bulls.
Oh yeah, you'd have been alive. Yeah. That would have been like 01 or 02.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have remembered it.
No.
I don't remember it, actually.
Did they all give out like magic wands because he was a wizard? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I don't remember that either. But yeah, that did happen. Oh, you know what happened? One thing okay. So do you know who Ray Clay is, right?
Yeah.
You know who Ray Clay is? Ray Clay was the public address announcer for the Bulls in the Jordan years, and the intros became world famous, right? Ray Clay actually, so he was told, he was still the PA announcer for the Bulls. He was told, I think specifically, not to do his from North Carolina 6'6" Michael Jordan, and he did it anyway, and they fired him. He did.
Oh,
how about that? That's I don't know. I just remember like that, and that was it.
Well, why was he not allowed to do it? It was iconic.
They just didn't want but they didn't want him to do it when he was playing for the Wizards.
Get over it.
He did it in the return to United Center when Michael Jordan was playing for the Wizards, and that was it. He was done. They went back to the guy who was the PA announcer before Ray Clay in like the late 80s, and that guy, I believe, is still the PA announcer to this day.
Wow. Okay. That is that's interesting. Well,
or at least until the last couple of years. I know. You never know what you're going to get in terms of NBA history on Dubs OT.
So if we get our hands on Captain Klay hats for Tuesday, are we going to get fired by Mike Holler the day after? And Dubs OT was just going to be done, out into the dust, over?
No, that won't happen. I tend not to lean, like I tend not to do anything. Like I usually will keep it professional and not like I would consider that, or somebody could consider wearing the Klay hat as like an open act of fandom, which I try to keep those lines a little bit more straight. But I think this is a unique example where it's like, why the hell not do it? Like it's you're paying respect to just an all-time great. So,
and back to the Jaylen Brown thing with saying Giannis is a child. It's like, guys, it's going to be November 12th. It's all right.
Plus,
everything's okay.
Plus, I look good in a captain hat.
Well, yeah. We buried the lead on that one.
Yeah. So let's do some fun with numbers and end it on that note here on Dubs OT. And wow, we appreciate everybody. We're going to end up going a full 90 minutes commercial free here on this Sunday evening, where it is just past 8:00 in the Bay and just past 11 o'clock here in Tampa. But it was absolutely worth it. 100%. And I can't thank everybody enough. We had a big crowd in the chat tonight and watching us as we continue to grow this thing. And y'all are the best, and keep getting the word out. And we will talk to you on Tuesday from Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. And yes, I look good in a captain hat, so I'm going to wear the captain hat on Tuesday. I will wear the cap, assuming we can procure them. But I think we're going to have the ability to procure a couple for Dubs OT on Tuesday night. All right, Warriors end the night 4-1, 6-1 now overall on the road to begin the year. You've got that trip plus the 2-0 to begin the year. According to Elias, first time the Warriors had faced three opponents, each with a winning percentage of .875 or higher, and won 2 out of 3 in that situation. First time they'd faced teams like that, minimum of 8 games in a season where they had faced. So basically, at this point of the season, when they had faced 3 teams consecutively. So Elias checked on that, and it's the first time the Warriors have done it and won 2 out of the 3 games ever. For whatever that's worth, that's kind of a unique one. Shout out Daryl Arata, the Warriors stat and note master. And quite frequently, I definitely want to shout him out because he passes a lot of things along to the media that are unique and interesting. And as I've joked with Daryl, hey, we've got a whole segment for a lot of your stuff, brother. But I do want to make sure from time to time we shout out Daryl. I know Daryl for a long time because when I first started working in sports media, Daryl Arata was working for the Sacramento Kings and then ended up going to the Warriors about a decade ago. So Daryl is the absolute best in the business in throwing those things out there. Warriors 6-0 when they score at least 120 points. The Warriors have scored 120 points 6 times. That's pretty good in 10 games.
I was going to say, it's not the undefeated. It's not the it's the 6.
It's the 6. 100%. It's the 6. 44 points for the Warriors bench. 9 of the first 10 games, the Warriors bench has scored at least 40 points. And when you look at it, it was Jonathan Kuminga leading the way with 20. Also 5 boards. Kuminga's rebounding motor has been a little bit better than we've seen it be in the past, which is, I think, another tell that the coaching staff is probably really happy with the way he's handled coming off the bench and with the way things are going. 6th time this year, the Warriors had 30 assists, 35. We had that number earlier, 5-1 in those games. And then the third quarter, 42 in the third. Most of the Warriors have scored in any quarter this year, but 5 times in 10 games, the Warriors have had a 40-point quarter. 5 times, including 3 times they've done it in the third quarter. And when the Warriors have been at their best, the third quarter has been a big pivot point. So another one of these things that's a different, unique, whether it's coming back in games or, as was the case tonight, blowing a game completely wide open, the Warriors have done that. And here's another one. For all the talk about starters and finishers, the Warriors have had 7 different starting lineups in 10 games and are 8-2. That is indicative of Steve Kerr pushing all the right buttons, which he has done an excellent job with in these first 10 games. Starters, combinations on the front line, combinations in the backcourt, getting the most out of Kuminga, getting the best out of Lindy Waters for the time that he was in the rotation, having him, helping him win a game. Big time stuff there. Warriors got they out rebounded the Thunder. We mentioned that earlier in the show. 5-0 when they out rebound their opponent. Some individual numbers, season high in points for Steph Curry. And look at this. Steph Curry's best 2 games tonight in terms of points, and Boston on Wednesday. So he playing his best at the most important moments. I don't know that tonight was a bright lights game with everything going on around the NFL on a full-blown NFL Sunday. It was kind of buried.
It was for the diehards.
But it is definitely a building that Steph Curry loves playing in. And I think we know that from the last decade, as is TD Garden. He loves playing at TD Garden. DeAnthony Melton, first start as a Warrior, first double-double of the season. He had 10 boards. He had 19 and 10. DeAnthony Melton played the 2 tonight and had a David Lee game. 19 and 10. 19 and 10. And playing good defense. But, yeah, how about that? Jonathan Kuminga, 20 off the bench, second straight 20-point game. Tonight, significant. Cleveland game, miss me with that. Still, you combine the 2, it's 2 consecutive games. Draymond Green, 11 assists. Buddy Hield scored his 10,000th career point tonight.
You saw that?
That's a Daryl Arata. Appreciate that. Only 8 for Buddy Hield, but the Warriors able to win anyway. And Andrew Wiggins, 18 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. Really good. Wiggins had a very quiet but really strong game. He had 3 steals in 35 minutes. So, yeah, Wiggins was not, I think, he didn't seem like a headliner tonight, but Wiggins was one of the best players on the floor for the Warriors tonight.
No, he absolutely was. I thought he was key to be out there at the end, too, because I don't think he was turning it over for all the bad decisions made. I don't think Wiggins really might have had 1 turnover, but for the most part, I don't think he did anything bad. And I think he was just steady and solid with the defense, which when the lead shrinks from 30 to 6, you need to generate some stops. And Wiggins was a big part of that.
Yeah, big part of that as well. And so we look now, before we get some final thoughts here, just around the NBA, just real quick. 1 game going on, Toronto and the Lakers. Lakers are actually down at home to Toronto right now. That's in the third quarter. Memphis blowing out Portland. Memphis is off to a pretty good start. We talked about Sac and Phoenix. Phoenix is 8-2. The Kings won in overtime at Phoenix tonight. So Sacramento improves to 6-4 on the year, and the Suns dropped to 8-2. So a 3-way tie atop the Western Conference with the Suns, Thunder, and Warriors all 8-2. Denver beat Dallas in the closing seconds. In Denver, the Nuggets have won 5 in a row. They are 7-3 on the season, and they're the next team coming right now. So it's the 3 teams at 8-2 that I mentioned, and then Denver now, after a 2-3 start, they have won 5 straight to get to 7-3. That's going to do it. Greg, can't thank you enough, my man. Excellent job. Excellent show. Thank you to everybody who watched. We're back on the radio and we're back on YouTube and Twitch from Harmonic Brewing on Tuesday as the Warriors pay homage to Klay Thompson in his return to the Bay Area. We'll talk to you then. JD and Greg, KNBR, the